Hello everyone, Senator Tim Kaine here. It's now been 2 years since the Saudi regime brutally murdered Virginia resident and Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Justice has still not been served. A sham legal process has unfolded in Saudi Arabia, and the masterminds of the murder remain free. President Trump has not only dismissed evidence of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's responsibility for the assassination, he has even cozied up even closer to the immoral regime, selling it weapons for its disastrous war in Yemen and putting our country's nuclear know-how in its hands. And recently, we learned that President Trump bragged about protecting MBS from Congress after our own intelligence agencies concluded that he ordered Khashoggi's murder. Let me be clear. We will hold Saudi Arabia to account for these heinous crimes until we see a dramatic improvement in the nation's treatment of journalists and political dissidents. This includes Virginia resident Salah al-Haider and his mother Aziza al-Yusuf, and many others like them, who the regime arrests simply for advocating for women's rights. This is what is right, and this is how we honor the legacy of Khashoggi, who wanted to expose the fear, intimidation, arrests, and public shaming of people who dare to speak their minds. Thank you for inviting me to offer these thoughts on a most important topic today.
Hi, I'm Chris Van Hollen, and I'm proud to represent Maryland in the United States Senate. And I want to thank the Project on Middle East Democracy for all your good work, and especially for bringing us together today as we work to hold the Saudi regime accountable for its wrongful conduct, and especially to hold the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, responsible for his violation of human rights in Saudi Arabia, for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and for the disastrous war in Yemen. Now, under any normal circumstances, an American president, Republican or Democrat, would at the very least let the country know, let Saudi Arabia know that we disapproved of these actions. But instead, we have an American president who has cozied up to dictators, and in the case of Saudi Arabia, worked to cover up MBS's complicity in the murder of Khashoggi. So we have our work cut out for us, because America has not only been respected in the past because of the power of our military, but because of the power of our example. And while we're not perfect, we have worked to stand up for human rights and democracy and the rule of law. And you have no credibility if you only apply those standards to your adversaries and enemies. You have to apply them with other countries with whom you have working relationships. But this administration has forfeited that responsibility. And so we have to work hard to restore it. Otherwise, friends and foes alike will believe they can literally get away with murder. We can do much better than that.
Hi, POMED. It's Tom Malinowski. Thank you for having this event, and thank you for advancing the very simple proposition that our relationship with Saudi Arabia should be based on our interests and our values. It is not in our interest, I'm sure everybody in this meeting agrees, to allow any country, even a country that's a partner of the United States, to feel like it can get away with kidnapping and murdering a journalist who's based in the United States. We still don't have accountability for the brazen murder by Mohammed bin Salman of Jamal Khashoggi. And I don't believe that our relationship with Saudi Arabia can ever be right, can ever be consistent with our interests and our values until we have real accountability. There is bipartisan agreement on that question in the U.S. Congress. We have repeatedly passed legislation that tells this president that we need a different approach. In a few months, I'm pretty confident we're going to have a new president. We're going to enact that legislation. We are going to have a relationship with Saudi Arabia that actually is consistent with what we stand for as Americans. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to bring that about, and look forward to continuing our work together.
Hi, I'm Congressman David Trone from Maryland's 6th District. I'm glad to join you for POMED's event, taking a critical look at Mohammed bin Salman's leadership. Tomorrow, October 2nd, marks 2 years since the murder of Jamal Khashoggi by agents of the Saudi government. The U.S. intelligence community has concluded that MBS ordered Mr. Khashoggi's killing. Although 8 defendants recently received jail sentences for the murder, the UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Killings has called the trial mockery of justice. There has been no accountability for MBS or any other senior Saudi official, meaning quite simply, they've gotten away with murder. It's a serious problem for Saudi Arabia, the United States, and the rest of the world that MBS feels comfortable violating fundamental human rights and has learned he can do it with impunity. This man will probably rule Saudi Arabia for half a century. He likes to project an image as a reformer, but he's already shown himself to be anything but. We need to recognize the threat MBS poses to democracy, to human rights, and the stability in the region. I'm working in Congress to ensure real accountability by imposing real consequences. Thank you for coming together to discuss these vital issues, and thank you for listening. Take care, be safe, and let's do what's right.
Friends, today we gather to commemorate the extraordinary life of Jamal Khashoggi, prominent journalist, a visionary reformer, a loving father, and my constituent. On this fateful day 2 years ago, Jamal entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and never emerged. Since then, the world has been denied his voice and his vision for Saudi Arabia and an Arab world that respects human rights and rule of law, that embraces democratic norms and values, and that guarantees basic freedoms for all of its citizens. Jamal's brutal murder is a direct attack on core American democratic institution, the freedom of the press. When leaders fail to stand up for press freedom and the right to dissent, they empower oppressive regimes to undermine the truth. When leaders refuse to protect press freedoms by turning a blind eye to violence against journalists, they are complicit. The Trump White House has opted to remain silent on his death. We will not. And I will not let his death be forgotten or conveniently swept under the rug by this administration. That's why I'm working to pass the Protection of Saudi Dissidents Act, which would hold Saudi Arabia accountable for Jamal Khashoggi's murder and mandate concrete actions on the part of the White House. To honor Jamal Khashoggi's life and his legacy is to commit ourselves to journalistic freedom, to a free press, and to the right for all citizens to express themselves politically, including dissent. It's a defense of the truth. Thank you.
It is appalling that the G20 is taking place in Saudi Arabia. We still have to hold MBS accountable for his crimes against humanity. He has not had any accountability for the brutal killing of the journalist Khashoggi. There has not been any repercussion, and he has not had to account for his war in Yemen, which has killed thousands of women, thousands of children, thousands of civilians. The war still needs to end. Until MBS is held accountable, until the war ends, the international community should not be elevating Saudi Arabia. It is a mistake to be having the G20 there. We need to make it clear that MBS must be held responsible for his war crimes.
Good morning. I'm Congressman Jim McGovern, co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. 2 years after Jamal Khashoggi was brutally murdered and dismembered in a Saudi consulate in Turkey, true accountability remains out of reach and business has gone on as usual. It's stunning, really. Who in their right mind looks at what happened to Jamal and thinks, yeah, I'm okay cozying up to Mohammed bin Salman? Yet this coming November, Saudi Arabia an absolute monarchy that silences every dissenting voice and has no form of meaningful democratic representation, is set to host the 2020 G20 summit. It is time to say, enough. No more business as usual with the Saudi government. And that means no G20 summit until they tell the truth about Jamal's murder, free the human rights and women's rights advocates they've thrown in prison, allow independent media and journalists to report freely, respect freedom of religion, belief, and conscience, end the war in Yemen. And that's just the start. We will not achieve a peaceful or secure world as long as we continue to treat human rights as chits to be negotiated away in pursuit of arms and business deals. It's time to change the incentives, and Saudi Arabia is the place to start. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Congressman Adam Schiff, and I'd like to extend my thanks to the Project on Middle East Democracy for the opportunity to join you virtually for this conference as we mark the second anniversary of the Saudi government's murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Although the United States has long sought a constructive relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, our security and intelligence cooperation is undermined by acts that conflict with our core values and our national interests. From the continued imprisonment of women's rights activists like Loujain al-Hathlul to the brutal execution of a U.S. resident by 14 Saudi intelligence officers, the highest levels of the Saudi government have exhibited a shocking disregard for human rights and the rule of law. The president bragged to Bob Woodward that he, quote, saved Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from congressional accountability, a disgraceful statement that undercuts America's moral leadership. Congress is not in the practice of taking self-interested and implausible denials at face value. I am confident Democrats and Republicans will continue to demand accountability for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, including by ensuring that the Director of National Intelligence complies with his obligation to make public an assessment of the culpability of senior Saudi officials. Jamal's moral courage in criticizing the Saudi government is but one example of the vital role that a free press has to play in combating authoritarianism across the globe. As Congress evaluates future cooperation with Saudi Arabia, our choices must be informed by our democratic principles, and we must ensure the United States is doing all it can to limit the arbitrary exercise of power and protect the rights of journalists, human rights defenders, and all people. Thank you for your important work promoting inclusive, accountable, and democratic governance across the Middle East, and best wishes for a successful conference.